Okay, so we are recording now. Basically, I don't I don't really review movies, but I guess I'm about to do that right now. I watched the new Pinocchio movie, the Guillermo del Toro Pinocchio. He's Pinocchio. Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. I didn't really like it. I Before all of you Pinocchio fans who have somehow found my channel. Uh, I thought the animation was good. I thought the beginning was good. So, two very strong things. Directed by Guillermo del Toro as well. He's done some good stuff like Pacific Rim. Pacific Rim is great. I think my problem with it is that it just didn't really feel like Pinocchio. The beginning, spoilers if you haven't seen the movie. The beginning was good. It was strong and impactful, and it made you feel for Geppetto and losing his son Carlo. Like in this story, he has a son before Pinocchio, and his name was Carlo, and he loses him during the Great War, which is World War One, which doesn't really align with the original story of Pinocchio, like already. Which I was willing to be like, okay, that's fine. If he has a son, it wouldn't really make sense for him to have Pinocchio, I guess. So I looked past that, uh, up to the point where he's like at his son's grave and crying. That was emotional for me. That made me teary eyed. I don't get teary eyed at movies a lot. I kind of wish I did. So the fact that it got to that point was impressive. The rest of the movie, it like fully lost me. They had some stuff with like the fox from the original, El Volpe from the original Pinocchio movie. The original Pinocchio movie had a fox and a cat. Now this movie, you just get the fox, and he's not even a fox. He's like a dude, who's a ringmaster at a circus, and he's got a pet monkey, I guess, named Spazzatura, which I'm pretty sure is Trash. So he named his monkey Trash. The only monkey I know in the Pinocchio movie is like maybe the judge from later, but like after Pinocchio is made and after he starts going to like once he starts going to school, that's when the whole movie just kind of changes. You have like some small like glimmers, like little fractions that they pulled out of the original Pinocchio movie, not movie, the original Pinocchio story to like I guess keep the movie going or something. But it doesn't it doesn't like continue to follow the the story of Pinocchio. It follows like this new like sort of Pinocchio, and I feel like that's where it lost me because they straight up go into like generic villain being sort of like, oh yeah, I'm just kind of lying to you and using you for like my own gains and to get money, which sure I like yeah, that's kind of what happened with the fox in the original story of Pinocchio, but I kind of I don't know if they're gonna. I feel like if they're gonna change it, they should change it enough and not make like illusions. Not illusions like magic, like not like illusion, like alluding to the fact that it's inspired by the original story of Pinocchio, and they didn't do that. Instead, you got Pinocchio being kind of forced to be a Nazi in fascist Italy because he's Italian, obviously. And then like just some shenanigans with him calling Mussolini like a poop holder, like holding poop. Like there was a whole song and dance about it. If you've seen the movie, you'll know. But like, sure, I guess but like that's poop humor. And don't get me wrong, sometimes it can be funny, but this time it was just kind of meh to me, at least. And I don't know. There was They had Candlewick. Candlewick is was in the movie. Out of all the things that I expected to stay like true with this story, they had a boy named Candlewick, but he wasn't Candlewick. He was the child of like a Nazi. And he's like, I want to make my dad proud. And Pinocchio was like, you shouldn't have to try to make your dad proud. Your dad should already just be proud of you. That sort of thing. There's no toy island or toy land of toys in this story. Instead, they go to Nazi training camp. There is no fairy with turquoise hair. Instead, you have like a sort of like a biblically accurate sort of angels type being, which they call the wood sprite. It's like I don't think that's what that is. Sure, she's kind of blue, but she doesn't really look like a fairy. Um, and there's two of them, so that's strange. That's strange because there's two of them. One of them they look completely different except for the face. One of them's like a sphinx kind of creature that's also covered in eyes. The first fairy was also covered in eyes, but like it was just strange to me. They don't turn into donkeys unless you count fascism making you a donkey, which sure, yeah, I guess that would count. There was no fox and the cat. There was just a evil carnival circus ringleader who was named the fox. He didn't run away like first thing, and then he wasn't. He was sort of captured into a puppet circus, but like, kind of, sort of. What else happens in the story of Pinocchio? It's a lot. Like it's a lot, and I'm doing this on a whim after watching the movie, and it's a lot. I'm still kind of trying to process my thoughts about it because it's a lot. There's this whole plot line with Jiminy Cricket being a famous author who traveled like for a long time and became this like very storied person, and it's just kind of meh. Like, okay, yeah, I get it. We're kind of we know who Jiminy Cricket is, but like that's not really his character. He's just kind of supposed to. Jiminy Cricket is supposed to be like Pinocchio's conscious, like it is in the original story. He's also supposed to be 100 years old, which is like okay. I guess you can say that he spent 100 years, traveling, and that's why he has so many stories. But I don't even think Jiminy is his name in the original story of Pinocchio. I mean, he might be, but I really don't think so. I'm pretty sure it was just the 100-year-old cricket, which Pinocchio killed in the original story with a hammer. Which I mean, he gets squashed by a hammer in this story, but like he doesn't die. Like Cricket doesn't die until the plot is convenient. Like the original Pinocchio was just like mad, and he went and then squashed with a hammer, and then Cricket died. This story definitely not gonna happen. I mean, I guess it's made looks like for kids. Um, I mean, the original Pinocchio was supposed to be made for kids, and that was he fully killed that cricket. He was just trying to help him. So that was a little dark, even if it was for kids. A lot of old fairy tales are like that. Like, give it a break, I guess. Sort of. Don't don't take that out of context. What I'm trying to say is I oh, and then the terrible dogfish. The In the original story of Pinocchio, Pinocchio was eaten by something called the terrible dogfish. In Italian, it's il terribile pesce can, and it's like this big creature that looks like a dogfish, kind of like a shark. and it just swallows him when he goes out to sea and escapes the circus. Because, when they go to Toy Island, him and Candlewick and all the other boys that were on the island become donkeys, and they're basically sold like donkeys. Uh, so he becomes a donkey. He falls over and he hurts his leg, and then they try to kill him by drowning him. Then the fairy with turquoise hair like saves him and turns him back into like a little boy. And then he goes out to sea, and then he's eaten by the terrible dogfish. And then that's where he finds his dad, Geppetto, who's been looking for him for 2 years, and for 2 years he's been like inside of the dogfish. Candlewick also just kind of an asshole in the original story. Like Candlewick, it came along like a day before Pinocchio was to be made a real boy. He was like, "Hey, Pinocchio, you want to drink whiskey and chew bubblegum on Toy Island with me?" And Pinocchio was like, "Well, you're like my best friend, so yeah, sure." And then they go do that, and then they get turned into donkeys. Now Pinocchio has to wait even longer to be turned into a real boy. So screw Candlewick. I think it was like Lucignolo. That was his name in Italian. But like, God. So they get eaten by the terrible dogfish. What I was gonna say is the terrible dogfish in this movie isn't. It's like a weird anglerfish looking thing, and it's got like blowholes on the side of its head. It looks gross. I mean, I'm sure the real terrible dogfish was pretty gross, but I don't think it looked that gross. I don't think you could call this thing a dogfish. I'm pretty sure you would call it like some kind of anglerfish, because that's what it looked like. So I don't know why they called it that. Ending as well. Pinocchio's not even turned into a real boy in this story. Like heavy, heavy spoiler alert. Like he just stays a puppet, but who can die. So that's that's something. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, he's alive long enough to see the cricket die, Spazzatura the monkey die, who became his friend at some point, and old enough to see his father die. So that was all dark, but like they didn't mean it to be dark. They were like, ah, well, look, now Pinocchio is this or whatever, and it just didn't really sit that well with me because it didn't feel like I'm telling you right now, it didn't feel like a Pinocchio story. If you want a more faithful adaptation of the story of Pinocchio, you should watch the 2019 Pinocchio movie. It was directed by I forget his first name, but it was a guy named Garone. Uh, I watched it, not in theaters. I pirated it. I'm gonna fully admit that I pirated that movie, and I don't regret it. That was a good movie. That's an actual good the story of Pinocchio. Like if you want to know the story of Pinocchio and like the real thing, not like the ooh, let's take Pinocchio with a twist or just make it a new story, or the kid thing of Pinocchio in the 1940s made by Disney sort of thing. If you want the real, mostly real Pinocchio, like a mostly faithful adaptation of Pinocchio, you should watch the 2019 Pinocchio made by Garone. Only thing is, it's made in Italy, so everyone's speaking in Italian. So you'll have to watch it with subtitles. If you have a problem with reading subtitles, boo hoo, I guess. Like, don't read stories, I guess. Anyway, that's really all I have to say. Watch Pinocchio 2019. I would rather not watch Pinocchio by Guillermo del Toro. Uh, this is all my personal opinion, and I'm not saying this as fact. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you for watching. See you later.